Welcome, everyone. I'm John Sangenberger, Executive Director of Alumni Relations at the Tepper School. We're delighted to have you join us for this afternoon alumni panel. We have some amazing alumni to speak to our students today. Let me give you a couple of practical housekeeping items before we get started. I'm going to ask all the students to turn off your videos right now. We'll just want to leave the panelists on since we're just using our normal format, not the deaf. And also keep yourself on mute until we get to the question time. And we'll have an opportunity for you to open it up then. But I want to thank David Yaffe from 2021, our GBA representative from Alumni Relations, for inspiring the call that we have today. And give David just a moment to say a word.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all the panelists for your time this evening. I know this is a very uncertain time, so we really appreciate your insight into what you went through a decade ago, and as we are entering either full-time or internships over the summer. So thanks again for coming this evening. And
for the students, David will be tracking your questions that you might have in the chat feature. So if you want to go down there and get your questions in, we'll make sure that after we've had an introduction by the alumni panelists and they've answered some of the questions you've already submitted, if there's other questions or comments, he'll take it there. But I also want to thank my colleague, Steve Rackus from the Master's Career Center at the Tepper School. He and his colleagues have been co-sponsoring this with us and working together. So Steve.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. I'll just say very quickly, thank you to our alums for being here. Thank you to the GBA for sharing the student interest in having this panel. It was a delight to put it together, and I hope that you all get a lot out of it and hear from the experiences that these very talented people had in your shoes a decade ago.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's great to have you with us. We also have Professor Sundar Kekri on the line here. He could not miss an opportunity to say hello to these great alumni that he knows. So great to see you as well. So very happy to have some alumni with us from the class of 2008, 2009, and 2010. They want to share their insights and their perspectives on what they experienced going through the last financial crisis that we had. And some of us who've been around a little bit longer, Sundar and myself and Steve, we've seen a number of these things over our careers. So you're not alone, and you're going to get some great inspiration here. I was very grateful for the responses we got from our alumni when we put on a post on LinkedIn to network with our students, and the words that came in, the openness from our alumni community was very inspiring, and that really led us to decide on doing this panel today. So I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves in just a moment, but we have from the class of 2008, Pinky Mishra and John Zinn. We also have from 2009, Josh Schwartz and Kayan Demchek, and from the class of 2010, Vijay Duraswamy. So we're going to go ahead. We'll start with the 2008 introductions, and then we'll go up to 9 and then 10, and then we'll start in order. So welcome. John, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, John, this is John Shin. I'm actually class of 2010, so maybe I should hold.
Yeah, you should hold, John. Oh, yes. Go ahead.
So I'm John Shin, currently the CEO of Loomwave. It's a early stage company. We're developing the next generation of automotive radar sensors, currently backed by 9 VCs and 3 strategics, including BMW, Baidu Ventures, and also Shanghai Automotive. I was born in China and moved to Boston when I was 11 years old. Been in Boston the last 30 years. My company, it's about a 35 people company right now, headquartered in Arizona, with a satellite office in Silicon Valley and also Boston. And my family and I live in Boston. In terms of my career prior to Tepper, I was a systems engineer, was definitely a career switcher. Came into Tepper really with the help like Joshua certainly, and many others, COC, really helped me to make that transition. Had my internship as Progressive Insurance, a rotational leadership program, and full-time diamond management consulting, and spent about 3 years in the consulting world before moving on to a Fortune 100 company. Took several executive roles, led the innovation in the company, also invested time in corporate investment. And finally, I led the strategic partnerships, B2B partnerships across quite a few industries. 2017, I decided to quit my job and sold my house, and certainly received permission from my wife to start a company. My brother is the CTO. He's been asking me to start a company for about 10 years. And finally, 2017, I felt my experience across consulting, investment, B2B partnership made sense. So here I am. We're fourth year into the company.
And John would have been here on campus for his reunion, but now has to wait until April of 2021 for that, along with his classmate, VG. VG, why don't you go ahead now too as well?
Sure. Thank you, John. So this is VG Doraiswamy from the class of 2010, and I currently lead the portfolio marketing team at SAP Ariba. Ariba is the cloud procurement software business within SAP. So I started with SAP right after graduation, so almost approaching my 10th year now, moving across various businesses and roles during this time. I'm originally from Chennai, India, but I had just moved to Pittsburgh a year before starting school. And then right now I live in the Bay Area, California. So it's pretty warm out here today. And I would say, I think from before Tepper, okay, I was wondering what my other question was. So before Tepper, I was in IT services. So I worked for a large IT consulting firm, Infosys Technologies, both in India, and then I had moved to Pittsburgh to work with my client, Bank of New York Mellon at that time. And then that's how I switched over to B2B enterprise software again, but I'm in a product marketing role right now. And in my current role, I do work with a large number of B2B companies, mostly the Fortune 500 enterprise software companies at this time. So I can offer a lot of perspectives around that.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Cayenne in Nashville.
Thanks, John. Cayenne Demchak. I am Chief Innovation Officer for Cigna Medical Group, which is a subsidiary of Cigna Corporation, which is a Fortune 15 health services company. Let's see, class of 2009, and I was a dual degree student. So I spent most of my time at Tepper, but also spent some time over at the Heinz School getting my master's of health policy and management, which I've used very little of, clearly, in a health services world. Prior to Tepper, I was in DC. I was a health policy analyst. So I had a bit of a career change. I call it a life change, going from the nonprofit think tank world to the very large for-profit corporation. And I grew up in a really small town in Maine that nobody has ever heard of, so I will not bore you with it, but just know I had graduated of a high school class of 43 people, and that was 6 towns, so very small. Let's see, I'm based in Nashville. My house is based in Nashville. My job is based in Phoenix. So I have enjoyed spending the last 7 weeks at home for the first time in a very long time. Let me see, was there anything else? Was that all my questions?
Sounds good.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll go down to Josh.
Hey, Josh Swartz. I was in Cayenne's class 2009. My background was in high tech and software, and I went into consulting after business school because I was among the population of people who, unlike Cayenne, had actually no idea what I wanted to do. So it felt like a reasonable leap to kind of continue the abuse, if you will. I do have a lot to say, by the way, about what you all are probably feeling or going through. I want to get there soon. But also, I know I'm excited to hear Pinky, because I know she had a very unique story in her class, also with the second year full-time offers that were just, as first years, we were like, oh God, thank God that's not us. And then a summer later, it was like, oh God, that's us.
Thank you, Josh. We're going to go up to Pinky then. Pinky, give us a little bit of your background, and then we'll jump right into to the question we really want for all of you is how did you handle that time in your career, and particularly first with your internship, and then as you went into your new hires. Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So hi everyone, Pinky Mishra. I'm dialed in from my home outside Philadelphia. It's where I grew up. And yeah, I was the class of 2008. And in 25 words or less, I've been doing a mix of strategy and M&A for the last 12 years, both with services companies, financial services, consulting, as well as on the corporate side. Did a lot of deals as part of the corporate development team at Thermo Fisher, which I know has historically been a huge recruiter at Tepper, and you know, moved on sometime later to be a director of M&A at a public company, which was so awesome, and lots of twists and turns, all very interesting, all connected to strategy and M&A. But this is more about you than about me. And so in 2008. I graduated into the financial crisis, and I actually joined the investment banking division of Lehman Brothers. That was my internship in 2007. And wasn't I jazzed to get a full-time offer at the end of the summer? I was so pumped. And then I went back to Lehman, and you know, 2 months later, Lehman Brothers is bringing down the financial system of the world. It was not me. It was not me. But it was quite a learning experience. And so what I did in the immediate term, to your question, John, I mean, I was in a position where Lehman and all of the other big banks, and probably smaller banks as well, they were cutting not just fat, but muscle, including junior bankers such as myself. I transitioned out of Lehman February of 2009, and the PC answer for what I did was that I took some time, reevaluated my priorities. The non-PC, real heart-to-heart answer, I just lost it, because my job had defined who I was. And now that I wasn't, because I worked so hard to be a banker or to transition into a new phase. Prior to business school, I'd worked in a number of startups, and this was a definite career transition, and I was just going to make $1 jillion, then retire at the age of 30, and that was going to be that. And all of that went like poof, like, you know, it was just gone. So I lost my sense of self, and that was really tough for me. And so if there's any guidance that I can give to anyone in that kind of situation, your job does not define who you are. Like, I don't mean this to sound like overly philosophical. It's not you. It's your job. You have it for a reason. It pays your rent. It pays your mortgage. It pays your kids' tuition, whatever. It's not you. So getting over that hump of, okay, it's all right to not be a banker. It's all right to do something else. That took a lot of kind of deprogramming. In the summer after that, I had never thought of going into the public sector, but there were just no gigs around. I took a pay cut to work for the Congressional Budget Office during the summer of 2009. It was a fantastic experience. I was evaluating the government's investments in the TARP program, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, the bailout program. And it was, I mean, a different world entirely. Moving from not just for-profit, but like hardcore for-profit investment banking to a government office. And the way of work was different. The tools they were using was different. The everything was different. And you know what I did? I went with it because number one, it kept me connected to doing something productive, something that built on my experience. I certainly had experience with TARP. I mean, I helped break the economy. I could at least try to help fix it. And the other thing is that it was a job that was pretty regular in terms of its hours. And it afforded me the freedom to pay my rent while looking for something that was a better fit. And it's a fantastic experience to have worked there and to have that in my portfolio of experiences. But after that, I transitioned, I was interviewing, and I went to Thermo Fisher, and I joined their corporate development team. And Thermo very much operated at the time like a holding company. And so it was sort of like an in-house investment bank for the enterprise. So I was back to doing deals, and back to consummating transactions, just not in an investment banking Wall Street context, but in a slightly different context. So number one, I took a pay cut. Number two, I recovered from it pretty quickly. And I used the mental freedom of being able to meet my economic needs, use that freedom to look for something that was more appropriate to the career path that I had originally envisioned for myself.
Great, Pinky. Thank you.
Yeah,
Let's
you're
go
welcome.
to Josh.
Yeah. So I guess a few things. So I've been pretty active on the recruiting side, and also we're still engaged on campus with Dr. Kekri with Lab. So I've been in some way, shape, or form staying close to the to campus. And look, when I was an intern, it was when I got back at the end of my internship that the world fell apart, and Pinky lost her job, and because Pinky broke the economy, and everything just cascaded like quickly, like in a matter of months. And whereas at this time every year, the interns, mid-April, you guys should be at about 85, 90% have an offer in their hand, at least one, and many have more. And I believe that right now you guys are somewhere around 80, 82%, something like that. In VG and John's class, so when I was a second year and they were a first year, that was 60% in mid-April. In my class, we were dealing with it wasn't quite the collapse of Lehman Brothers, but there was a mortgage problem that was affecting the economy. It was much smaller scale, and then it came out of control. So I think we were not quite at the 90%, but a little bit lower. But it's nerve-wracking, because even in good years, getting an internship is like, and by the way, John, do we have mostly first years on, or mostly second years, or it's a mix of both?
Mostly first years, but
Good.
we do have second years, and we have some graduating students that are going out into the marketplace. Okay,
perfect. So look, it's not a little, it's very nerve-wracking. And even in good years, as I was in a bad year, I think my colleagues were in bad years, and I think you'll see success stories on all of them. But more importantly, it's as you start having conversations when you're alums with people in the 2022, 2023, 2024 class, the economy will be roaring. They'll be like complaining about, I don't know which of my 15 offers to choose from. And that's kind of what we dealt with when we would start engaging with our colleagues years after. But the point being, it's a nerve-wracking process for various reasons in good years. It's so emotionally and mentally challenging, particularly during this time. So I guess 2 or 3 messages that I just want to make sure come across. Number one is, look, no one's going to blame you. And I think I love the way Pinky said it, which is your job doesn't define you. Similarly, look at what's going on in the world around you. No one's going to look at your resume and be like, oh, you didn't get an internship with a top whatever. No one's going to look and say, oh, that was your fault. Everyone gets that, okay, tough economy. You'll find a path forward. You'll come out of this a lot stronger. But no one's going to blame you, and no one's going to penalize you, and it's not going to prevent you from coming out of this very tremendously successful. I think that's maybe point number one. Point number two is, and maybe similar to that, is it's not your fault. And so this is one of those, accept accountability for things that you can control, but not the things you can't. So try to make the best use of this time, whatever that means for you. So if you are among those people, I've heard that in the consulting world, there are consulting firms who've withdrawn first-year offers, but replaced them with guaranteed full-time offers when they graduate in a year and a half. Which, hey, by the way, that's not bad. And maybe that means take the summer off and enjoy, and don't sweat it. Like, go do something, assuming the world opens up, that you wouldn't have otherwise done. And again, it's not your fault. It's out of your control. So try to maintain the most positive attitude you can about it. And then the last piece is, and maybe these are overlapping points, not very messy, but the last piece is you're going to be able to come out of this in a tremendously impactful position. So I remember that when we were graduating and when Pinky's class were graduating, a lot of the kind of anecdotal discussions were, this is going to be devastating to my future earnings and my career and my long-term prospects. How could we possibly recover from this? And the answer is, you do. You actually come out a lot stronger, and you will have it as impactful, if not more impactful, a career, because you're going to actually be a lot stronger than folks in classes that don't quite have this experience.
Diane, thank you.
I will try to be brief because everything that you've heard from Pinky and Josh, I agree with. And I also remember Pinky's experience. I don't know, of everybody.
Did I just talk about it too much?
No, just for some reason, like you embody that time period for me. It's strange. In a good way, in a really good way. So a couple of things. So one, for those of you, because it looks like quite a few of you do have internship offers, and obviously it's going to be a really unique summer. So just remember the things that you have been taught to do, right? Network as much as humanly possible. Networking in this environment, totally different, but do as much of it as you can, because it will continue to be an important part. One of the things that I remember, I was lucky enough to have interned with Cigna, got an offer to join their development program post-graduation, and I was really scared to try to negotiate my salary because I didn't know if I tried to put up a fight if that offer was still going to be there. I have since learned, always negotiate your salary. But it was one of those learning experiences for me that, looking back on it, I would have done really differently. And then kind of the last piece is, as much as it's not your fault, it's also not your classmates' fault. And so there are going to be a lot of people who are going through something really different than you. If you have an offer that hasn't been rescinded and you get to start your job this summer, or you have an internship, there are a lot of people who don't, and they need your help and support, whether that's lending your networks, whether it's lending your ear, just being there and being a person, a friend, a colleague with them is really important because they need it. You need it, they need it. And then kind of, maybe I already said the last one, this is the real last one, is for those who do not currently have something, be open to something really different. I know a lot of our classmates, whether it was taking unpaid internships to get an experience that they would never have contemplated previously. Some of them took time to write books or start writing books or start thinking about writing books. Others took time to be with their families because business school, as you all know, is a lot. And so they weren't spending as much time with their families during classes, and it just gave them an opportunity to do something really different. It might not have been what they expected, but everybody that I know in our class, and then the class of 2008 and then the class of 2010, as Josh said, have gone on to do outrageously amazing things. And so this time will pass. And I heard something on one of the podcasts I was listening to this morning that's a good reminder. We caused this, like we shut down the economy, as opposed to there being a fundamental issue with the economy. Yes, we probably were moving towards a recession at some point, just given the cycles. But the likelihood of coming out of this faster is much higher than it was going into the fall of 2008. So I'll end there.
Thank you. Well, let's go and hear what it was like for the class that graduated in 2010. So we'll start with John and then go to VG, okay?
Yeah, I think in general, Josh, Cayenne, and Pinky covered majority of the content. I think the two things I want to offer up is it just force yourself to build out a good habit. I remember I used to beg Steve and Leslie Cromer, and there was another COC director who's not there, and really try to get on their schedule, not trying to get a job from them, but really to put in the rigor. Forces me every week when I go into their office. I've accomplished something, whether it's job research or thought about it. I just didn't want to give up myself. And certainly alumni like Josh and quite a few others. And they taught me everything about what it takes to do case interviews and alumni in some of the companies. And these are the times where, we're certainly here talking to you. There's going to be strong connection there with the companies you're trying to get into. The last thing I would say is something that actually I started back in 2008 and I'm still doing now is pretty much every day. I go onto YouTube and download these motivational things. Sounds really cheesy, but there are moments every single day before I walk into an investors meeting, before I walk into a biz dev meeting or my board session, where I just need to pick me up. I probably listened to about a half hour this morning while I'm banging out email. You just find different ways. That may not do it for you, but it does it for me, and I've been doing that for the last 10 years. So these are some of the tips and tricks that helps me.
Okay, Peachy?
Sure. And I'll probably start out by sharing my story, especially coming from an international student perspective, because I was reliant on a visa when I joined the business school. So I quit my full-time job, and then I started in 2008. And then a month later, this bloodbath on Wall Street. And I'm shocked. I'm like, did I do the right thing? Especially when my dad asked me like 5 times, do you really have to quit your job? Can you not do it part-time? And I was like, no, I'm going in all in. And then this whole thing happened. So, and then what followed was almost, a year of a lot of twists and turns, I would say. The number of job applications or postings fell on the career portal. And then the worst thing was going to every career fair, and then they have a clear sign out there saying no internationals. And that was even more frustrating for us. And luckily, there was a lot of us, so we all kind of faced it together. But we went to every single fair, the technology fair and CMU. We went all the way to Washington, D.C. to attend the Black MBA conference, and then a bunch of other women's conferences. But pretty much everywhere was like, internationals don't apply. And so it was definitely, a lot of disappointment and frustration and rejections, even the handful of interviews that we had. I think I at least busted most of them, and so I didn't have any opportunities by April. So that 60% that Josh quoted, I was one of that 40% who didn't have an offer by mid-April. But I will share some of the strategies that really helped me. I think one is lowering my expectations and broadening my options. When I first came in to do an MBA, I wanted to actually transition to the biomedical industry. I was very passionate about the biomedical industry. So I was trying to get an offer with some of the top biomed companies. Didn't happen. They wanted particular experience only if you had experience in that industry. So that didn't happen. And so I said, okay, I'm broadening it. I don't want to tie it to industry or even role at some point. I kind of was looking at consulting, marketing, product management, those type of roles. And the other thing I did was cast my net wide enough and seek help from every single person. Like, you have no clue. I would go by bus or by train, by flight, whoever sits next to me I had to find out, where are you working? Can you introduce me to someone? Does your company hire MBAs? And I had this long spreadsheet of people and contacts, and you reach out to 10 people. I learned that 3 people will respond to you and 1 person will give you a phone call. And that means even to just get to 10 phone calls, you have to reach out to almost 80 to 100 people. So, but I had to do it. And I think one of the best decisions I made during that time, by early March, I kind of knew we had finished our Seattle trek, and I had interviewed with a few companies and I didn't have an offer. So I realized somewhere I had to upskill myself and build my skill. Just this IT services background was not really going to help me get an internship. So I actually reached out to companies locally in Pittsburgh, and I offered, and I said, I'm willing to do a project for free. I'm an MBA student, but I can work up to 20 hours or 15 hours a week. and do a project. And actually, one of the very first companies I reached out was Medrad, and they bought that. And they said, sure, and I had an awesome person who hired me into that role. And I worked for them. I did a project because I did a project on them in the channels and the alliances group. And it was that experience that actually led me to an internship at VMware. I had interviewed with VMware for a different role that I got rejected, but they reached out 2 weeks later. I had started an unpaid internship. I converted that project into an unpaid internship at Medrad. And then by June 1st week, VMware reached out and said, would you be interested in this role? I almost given up. I was like, this is going to be another rejection. But my fiance at the time, he was the one who went into my mail and actually said, I'm interested in interviewing. Now he's my husband. So, and then I interviewed with them and I actually got the job. So I did take another 2 weeks. I owed it to the Medrad to finish my project there. And then I almost started my internship in the 3rd week of June. But actually one thing led to the other. So VMware, I interned with their alliances group. And then my full-time was a cakewalk, surprisingly. By early December, I interviewed with SAP, and then I got an offer from them by February. So that's one thing I feel like, just come up with more creative ways, but always reach out for help. And I definitely want to call out Josh and Cayenne from my senior class. They were there for us all the time. I remember meeting them in my first week of orientation. They both were there, and I think they were a huge support that entire year. And a lot of our seniors as well. And as someone mentioned, the COC, Alans from everywhere, but always make sure to reach out and ask for help. And the one thing I'd like to close out with is probably, I see a number of you having internship offers, which is amazing. I would say, do not forget to do your networking while you're interning, because that is the best time you can actually network in a more relaxed fashion, because you're not there yet for full time, but just you have the genuine interest to understand what are the types of roles that exist, what is each person doing within their company, and build your network. So please continue to do that, whether you have an offer or not. That would be the only bit of last advice. Thank you.
Very good. We're giving us some great advice here, and I know the students are appreciative for it. There were some questions already. There's some about your salary expectations. Did you have to lower them? How did it impact your career? If anybody wants to jump in on that one, I know that's a concern for the students. Is this going to be something that lowers their expectation for the future and holds them back from being what they had hoped to be?
This is not going to dictate your future, guaranteed 1000%. Remember that people love to quote cliches. It's a journey, it's a marathon, not a sprint, blah, 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 blah. I apologize for my workout gear. I just came back from a walk outside, and it's a very windy walk. And along each step of it, it looks like a linear path. I'm going straight this way, and I'm keep going straight, and that's what I'm doing. And guess what? It's really windy when you zoom out. Think about your career from the perspective of zooming out. If there's an average age of, I don't know, I'll pick a number 30, you've got a career of, I don't know, call it 30 more years. Let's say that you retire at the age of 60. You've got a 30-year career. And in that career, you are going to switch jobs probably more frequently than your parents did, or previous generations may have. In my class, my best friend from business school, he had his offer rescinded from UBS investment bank like a week before graduation. I've known this guy forever. I talked to him on the phone yesterday. I've never seen him cry except for that day when his offer got rescinded. I mean, it hits you hard. That guy is now a managing director in consulting at Accenture Strategy, I believe. It didn't hold him back one bit. Were there twists and turns along the way? Yes. Did he join some firms and work at some places where he wasn't exactly like thrilled to the gills about it? Yes. But he made it work, and it has not held him back. And he was class of 2008, same as me. So this is not going to define you, just like my other soapbox about your job not defining you. It's a long stretch that you're working with. So resist the temptation that I gave into, which was, I'm going to go into investment banking, make $1 jillion, retire, and, you know, play the piano the rest of my life. No, that's like, that's asinine. To have thought that, and that's like a stupid way of thinking. So, and I was stupid for thinking that way. I was stupid for not seeing that it's a little segment, like on my windy walk that I just went to, and the road twists and turns. Do you guys know Adam Grant, who's at Wharton? He's fantastic. And he's a professor. You can look him up. He's on LinkedIn. He's very active. He's got this amazing graphic about how the trajectory of success is not linear. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes like really, really down, then it goes really, really up. So I realize this is tough to swallow at this particular moment, but just keep that in the back of your mind and use that zoom out perspective to kind of ground yourself a little bit. I hope you'll find it helpful. You can definitely do better than I did, which was get laid off from Lehman and, like, you know, just like completely self-destruct practically. Just be like sleep all day, drink all night, like just not even know which end was up for a decent period of time before I figured out, okay, like you got to pick yourself up, you got to move on, and you got to broaden, as VG was saying, broaden your scope of what you're looking at. And it's not going to define you, guaranteed 1,000%.
Who else
One
wants to jump
plug
in?
from the healthcare person on the panel, based on what you just said. This is regardless of what is happening in your career perspective, find a therapist. Get somebody, like, seriously. I've had conversations with our HR team about that. I think all of the executives at mid and all the way up through the upper levels should be required to have a therapist. Not necessarily because you have these big personal issues or you're trying to resolve childhood trauma or any of those things, but there are just things that happen, whether it's, you know, layoff situations, either you laying people off or potentially your job getting laid off, big decisions that you have to make, things, you know, projects that go really badly, you know, just life. They help with life. Find a therapist.
Or an executive coach, yes.
It's the best thing you can do for yourself.
And you can do it virtually now.
Yes, that's
Yes,
right.
yes, you can.
I'll pile on to
And if you need help finding one, let me know. We have a fantastic network of them.
I'll pile on to that and just say, also invest in developing a personal board of directors. And that personal board of directors ideally shouldn't be other MBA students. It could be other MBAs. It ideally would be people from different industries who give you that kind of perspective that absolutely a therapist or an executive coach can provide to you, but just people that you trust and keep in touch with on, like, call it a monthly basis, if not a weekly basis. And you just bounce things off them. And they surface insights that you, because you're so focused on what you're doing, you just might have missed. I have a personal board of directors, and I mean, it includes one non-MBA. She works in finance for Cigna, actually, here in Philadelphia. Two MBAs, both friends from Tepper, and one PhD scientist who works for, I don't know, J&J, and one other. So they're from all over the place. And you don't have to tell them, I am designating you a director on my personal board. Just build it so that you have a regular network of people to reliably check in with. And then you check in with them, they check in with you. It's a virtuous cycle. Everyone's happy.
We've got a couple of other questions that are in there, and maybe just ask this general one. It says things that don't kill you can make you stronger. So how have you become more resilient in this process? Some of you have shared that, but I think it's good for the students here to see what you've learned from this and how it's made you stronger.
I think that creating that level of compassion and empathy, which otherwise we may not have had, I don't know, because I didn't have the benefit of graduating in a wonderfully, buoyant economy year. I think that that's part of the strengthening process. I think we have a deeper appreciation of all the crap that all of us had to go through, and we had to pedal twice as fast as folks in other years where the economy was much easier, much richer, much better, greener pastures. And I think that was part of the strengthening process. At work, like Cayenne said, in hindsight, she would have negotiated. I don't know, Cayenne, if you were saying you did negotiate and you're glad you did, or you would have negotiated harder. Which one was it?
I did not negotiate, and I should have.
So I live in New York. Booz they gave me an offer to join them in New York. I didn't want to go to New York. I'm not a New York guy. I'm from San Francisco. But it was like, I wasn't going to negotiate that because I didn't want to rock the boat, because I was like looking at friends like, Pinky and Alik and other people who were like losing jobs. And I'm not going to complain about what city I'm going to. So you build a life around it. But I think you kind of embrace, you get much better perspective, like what's important, what's not, how much of this is pride. Like, I think the theme of today has been accept that there's a new reality that's divorced from what you thought was true when you went into business school. That was a dream, this is real, and kind of adjusting that perspective. At least that's my take.
Don, you
I
wanted to?
want to add, that this is not the only time you're going to be faced with a situation like this. That's what Pinky said. I think look at it from a larger perspective, and that's what I'd like to say. There's people being laid off like crazy, at least in the Bay Area that I can see, right? Like every single day I see how many, there's pay cuts happening. So to the prior question on salary, yeah, you may think you're starting low, but there's people who went to a certain level and now there's pay cuts officially. I think Tesla just announced, countries across the world, I can tell you, are doing pay cuts. So these are things you're going to be like battling. We might not get the promotion we want tomorrow. We might not, there will be office politics you'll be dealing with all the time. How many times do I hear from my colleagues saying, I had to get that role, but I did not, so-and-so got it because of this. So there's going to be so many different situations. And especially when you're navigating successful crisis like this, when you navigate crisis like this successfully, it only builds your resilience more. I always, like every time I'm faced with a challenging situation at work, I always think back of the days. I'm like, if I could get that internship after so many months, I can do like anything I want. Or if I don't get this, it's okay. I'm going to find another path that will give me that same level of satisfaction. And I think I faced that recently with my salary expectations. I took on a promotion, and then I realized, I found out now that I manage a team, I have access to salary data, and I found out how my pay was actually lower than some of my peers. And it was actually a fellow student, one of my colleagues, Anna, who works in Microsoft. She and I are in touch, and we talked about this. I'm like, how am I going to approach this? And she gave me some really solid advice. So to what Pinky said, having that personal board of investors really matters. She told me how to approach this. I went to my boss, showed him like what I've delivered, what I plan to deliver the next year, and why I should be at this level. I was surprised. I was not hoping for my salary to change, but they did end up changing and bringing me up to the level of others. So you're going to be faced with situations like this through your careers down the line. So this is just another opportunity for you to build your resilience and learn from it as well, I would say.
John, did you have a comment that you wanted to make as well?
Yeah, just piggyback. I think looking at 2008, internship seeking, and I have to give kudos to the partners that I worked at for consulting that put me into shape. I think those experiences where you're walking into a project, frankly, I have no idea what the project is all about, but the partners knew. And I think through all these things, to VG's point, what I walked away with, I think 10 years later through different careers and jobs, is confidence. I think confidence at this point, no one can take it away. I am not the smartest person. I never had the best grade, but what I do have is the really strong work ethics and the level head. And, give me time, I can figure it out. I think that's what VG is saying, on the resilience. So I think if I look at anything in the last 10 years, it's not really of course, money is great, the career titles, everything else, but that confidence, I know tomorrow if I, God forbid we, have to look for another job, I know I can do it. It's not a snap of the finger, but I've done this so many times. So I think that's something that definitely appreciate.
And John, I'll just quickly add, since you were just speaking and folks probably still not remember, I like your idea about how you use a daily motivation YouTube video to kind of get pumped up. I have been an inveterate reader of dailystoic.com, and some of you might know it, some of you might not. Those who should not should go sign up as soon as this webinar ends. Oh my God, it's life-changing, life-changing. And you get an email each morning, and it's just a distilled message from Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or anybody, or Cato, or folks that you may not have on your bedside table, but the core about maintaining perspective, about focusing on the essentials, all of that stuff is right there, and it is just the best way to start the day. So that's part of my routine too.
Great. We have another question that came in. With the current situation in mind, how should an international student manage this opportunity, given the added pressure of having visas and looking for jobs in this kind of environment? So can anyone comment on that?
I'll probably start. I think we definitely had that situation in our year, and I think some of my seniors too. I will admit there were folks that had to go back to their home countries because of the visa situation. But I think they also chose. There's multiple workarounds on how you can still apply for a visa or get a company to at least move you to another country. Like they can still give you an offer. I just did it for one of my own team members who didn't meet the H-1B quota last year. So I moved him to India, and then to now he's working out of Canada. And then hopefully I'll bring him back to the US. So there's plenty of things that can happen, but it's also, I think, a time of reflection as to what you want to do. As I said, there were students who consciously chose to go back to their home country and have amazing careers right now. There's folks that have come back since then as well. There's folks that worked a few years and then gone back to their home countries. So there's a lot of options for you, as I say. It is definitely, it's another level of stress, I admit, and it feels sometimes like, oh, just because of the visa, I couldn't get that opportunity. Yes, you are going to face that. But it's, again, I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes together for you is all I would say, as long as you know how to manage that well.
Yeah, I remember some friends in our class that ran into that issue, and several of them ended up taking full-time roles at places that probably would not have been their top choices because they were still accepting students that needed visas. And several of them have moved back to home countries on their own accord after working in different places for periods of time. But one that I can think of, she ended up in a very small town in Pennsylvania working for like the strangest little company. And she's been there for now coming up on 12 years. And, you know, it ended up being a great opportunity for her. She's married, you know, she's built a life around it. And so going back also to the resiliency, like just really trying to find the positives in whatever those opportunities are. You never know what it is that you're getting into. You know, most of us had no idea what we were walking into for, you know, the full-time jobs or even the internships. And so the thing you think might be amazing, or the thing you think is amazing could actually be terrible and you hate your life. And the thing that you don't think would be that great could actually be the best thing that could happen to you.
We have some other questions. David, if there's anything else that we haven't asked the panel yet, and for the students on, we've got some more time if you want to ask some other questions. I see the chat's been going really well. Thank you to the panelists for responding to those. I'm also glad that we have so many of our outstanding career counselors and coaches on the call tonight, so that they're very supportive of the students, and they've been with so many alumni through the years who've gone through the challenges, that they're a great people to go to get some good advice and to follow John's advice, I think, earlier of schedule a time each week to go in and give yourself some accountability for what you're doing, and also have someone there that can give you a boost or an encouraging word.
Yeah, I think we have one question from Ivy, which wasn't addressed in the chat. How should we navigate the uprising industries to work for at this point? Ivy, I think that might just be referring, just with the changing environment, if there are any new industries that maybe we should be targeting.
And I
Take
also
the time to plug healthcare.
I was just going to say
not that it hasn't been, but the healthcare space across all of it, everything from biotech and testing to supply chain through like care delivery strategy, all of that. Not that it had not been an outrageously interesting industry, given that I've spent basically my entire career in it in some way, shape, or form. But it's a really interesting place to be right now. And, I've been going back and forth with our sourcing team who are responsible for getting PPE for our frontline doctors, nurses, and, the way that they have had to become strategic, I don't think any of them thought this was a thing they were going to be doing. Like, they're working with sneaker companies who are producing masks, and it's an opportunity to find a way to get into an industry, whether it's an industry that existed before this or similar to coming out of 2008 when, the gig economy didn't exist when we were in business school 10 years ago. Now it does. Look for those places where things are gonna pick up, and if something looks interesting, jump into it. Whether it's volunteering from like a board or strategic advisor perspective, offering advice, or trying to actually get a job. If something looks interesting, jump on it. And I saw somebody is coming to Cigna this summer, so reach out to me and we will connect.
So
actually, that's the point I just wanted to touch on. Every year we kind of, John, you'll remember, we kind of drill into ourselves and each other, like, you have to reach out to alumni while you're looking for an internship or a job. You have to get to know, you have to build a network. Particularly, they're going to help you get interview slots and all that stuff. But the reach out is always awkward, because we always never really know what we're going to talk about. Like, oh, I see you work at Deloitte. That's cool, right? So it's always a little bit awkward and a little bit like, as well as you can prepare, it's still like you're cold calling. But now you have a great reason to reach out, particularly to folks in our classes, 08, 09, 10, among others. But particularly, you have a great reason to reach out. This is like, you can tell we have a lot of passion about this. We can talk for a long time about all the shit we had to crawl through. So you should definitely be reaching out to folks and use this as an opportunity to get to know others in our classes. I don't know anybody who would reject or turn down an outreach, particularly if it's like, hey, I'm going through a tough time. I think you went through something similar. Can we connect?
Joshua, on that point, I think it's important to leverage weak ties as well as the ties that are perhaps more prominent, our closer associates, the folks in the COC, the professors with whom we've spent a lot of significant time. Those weak ties are incredibly useful. For instance, I was recently in a position where I was interviewing for a full-time gig in the financial services industry, in the asset management industry. Something that, I have a 401k. I don't know anything about it beyond that. And so the fastest way to amp up my learning was to reach out to colleagues in the asset management industry. I reached out to somebody from Tepper 2008 who I have not talked to in literally 10 years. I sent him a cold message on LinkedIn just saying, hey, how are you? Remember me? Like, et cetera, et cetera. My phone rang 5 minutes later and it was him. And it was him saying, let's talk about your interview. Like, let me get you smart on this. That kind of thing, those weak ties, I think can't be underestimated. So even if it's been a while or if it feels awkward, as Josh was saying, just do it. People want to help people. So yeah, just do it.
Well, how are you all navigating this new remote and virtual workforce? So maybe give some tips for the students as they go out into this. They're digital natives in some ways, so they're getting used to this. But how are you facing it in your jobs right now, and how are you adjusting? How are you seeing things changing in your company because of the unique situation that we're in now?
I can jump in real quick. So my business is B2B. So from a commercialization, business development standpoint, certainly I like to meet people at their headquarters. I like to take them out to dinner and have drinks. That's where most of my business are done, and that certainly no longer exists. So what we're doing is really structure a lot of communication and video conferences. So I think where it applies to here, and one thing, my entire team are working from home, right? So right now we're doing a lot of video conferences, certainly want to be efficient. One little thing I noticed, I used to hate turning on camera on video conferences, even on Zoom. So it's always a picture and whatnot. But I think, there is a good connection when you turn on the video and you're looking at people in the eyes. It's not as good as in person, but it helps. So that's something that little things we're doing. We're having, daily huddles, all hands. Everybody jumps on, make sure we're motivated, and we talk through the planning of the day and the next day. So.
Others?
Yeah, I mean, just avoid the, so don't feel bad if you have like a child or a family member or somebody who jumps into frame. Like, don't be embarrassed about that. Like, that's happening to everybody. On the other hand, try to be a little bit selective about what's behind you. I was talking to a client the other day in the Midwest, and proudly displaying his gun rack behind him. And yeah, fine, maybe not for every audience. But by and large, look, it's awkward for everybody. I don't think there's anybody, at least in my day-to-day life, who's like accustomed to it. But now, look, it's the new normal, and we're actually setting up drinks and dinners with clients over Zoom now. So that's weird. But I think, look, it's an experiment. It's fun. Have fun with it. Nobody's particularly good or doing it better than anyone else. Be creative.
Josh, did you read about that guy? They talked about it in the Times this morning. He's a municipal government employee in California, and he was taking a Zoom call with his cat on his lap. And one of his colleagues said, "Oh, is it okay with the cat if I pursue initiative XYZ?" And because the cat was making a lot of noise and meowing, the guy takes the cat from his lap, throws it across the room. His colleagues were horrified. So don't do that. Short of throwing a cat across, I think he might be like in transition with his current position or something. So short of throwing a cat across the room, I mean, you're good. Just use common sense. Treat it like a real meeting.
Yeah, I would say embrace the cheesy. I've gone like as fluffy as I can go. For those that know me, Josh, I'm not an extraordinarily fluffy human. But with my team, I've started, we did our entire team meeting last week was just like the Brady Bunch. So everybody up on grids, and we just chatted on, get to know you type topics to just remind each other that we're humans before we are anything else. And I have some new people on my team, so it was a good way to get to know each other. I've started #Finally Friday emails in which each week there's a different question of something from that week that happened, either something you're proud of, something good that happened, and then something you're looking forward to over the weekend. So just embracing all of the things that as a leader you never envisioned yourself doing, but doing it because it's the right thing to keep the team connected. And then my leadership team, so my boss and all his direct reports, we've got this ridiculous group text going with javelinas running through people's yards and just like it's an overshare situation on all accounts, but it's been really a nice way to end in some days, like really difficult days, being that we have frontline healthcare workers that are doing COVID tests on a daily basis, that it keeps things light.
Very good. Well, I'm going to ask one last question, and I know that we only committed this for an hour, so we're really at the end of our time. But just one encouragement from you to the students who are listening. What impact did your Tepper education have on you and on your career? How did it prepare you for the careers that you're in and make you the talented leaders that you are today?
Sure, I'll go first maybe. I think Tepper has, I think this one, we heard it on the very first day. It's really not the models and the statistical tools that you actually learn that's equipping you in your job. Probably less than 5% of the tools and models that you learned in school is handy. But I think what Tepper has been preparing us is making us tougher, definitely. I mean, dealing with those wildly hectic schedules for sure. But also, I mean, building our tenacity, building our network, and teaching us to work with people of all types and of all calibers, but also learning to acknowledge each other's strengths, learning to ask for help when needed. I think those are critical values that we learn from Tepper that I think will serve us lifelong. And I'm definitely very proud of the alumni network and the network we built. That's standing as good. I mean, 10 years down the line, I can still say proudly that the network has given me so much, and it will continue to do so.
For the skills that you need immediately, like the first few years after business school, they tend to be a little more, at least in consulting, they're a little more quantitative, analytic. You're pretty close to data analysis. I was light years ahead of the Wharton, Harvard, and other MBAs who were at Booz. And what was awesome was they would come to me for help, and like my superiors would see that, which was great. So I think that, what we're doing differently is you're actually doing a lot of hands-on stuff. And my read is that at other business schools, it's a little more qualitative in nature, shall we say, at least based on the people I worked with.
John? Kayan?
Yes, I mean, I think for me it was very useful because I was a systems engineer. I didn't really fully understand the 4 Ps and the 5 Cs and different things. So I think the fundamental curriculum, statistical analysis. I got to say, the consulting club Josh ran, he was the president of the consulting club, put me into shape on pivot tables, VLOOKUPs, and all those things, very helpful. And then the other thing really got me a good taste of team work, that there are just so many, working until 4 or 5 in the morning. Everyone is just dead tired, but you have to get the projects done. But that starts to teach you how to, I hate to say it, man up, and how to work well with others and hold yourself accountable, because if you don't deliver your stuff, the team's grade is not great. So I think it's a fundamental business skill set plus a lot of the team-oriented exercises. And certainly the name Carnegie Mellon goes a long way. I'm in robotics, I'm in, self-driving cars, without a doubt. I just say, well, I'm a grad of Carnegie Mellon. And that itself, it builds a certain level of credibility. So I think it's a whole lot of things for me, at least.
I'd say one of them for me, I don't think I realized in myself, but saw it as I recruited and brought other Tepper students into the Cigna fold, is we're a really humble but gritty bunch. And, recruiting at other top business schools, the people there are not the same. And they come with different expectations, and they aren't willing to work as hard and show value to the organization in order to get the next promotion or get the next opportunity. And that goes a long way. You certainly have to be confident and know your value and be able to put yourself out there. But knowing that when I am interviewing or going to bat for a Tepper student, I know they're not going to come in and expect to be a director the next day, because that's not the type of student that we bring to campus, and it's not who we produce. So don't lose the grittiness. It's important, but also don't lose your sense of humility.
I'm just going to add one last thing. So I'm pretty much the polar opposite of John, who was a systems engineer. When I opened Excel for the first time, it was on the Carnegie Mellon campus. I had no idea what it was. And all of you can laugh at me, laugh it up. I didn't even know anything about it. What is this box called a computer? If a complete neophyte can turn into a financial modeler over the course of a 2-year MBA and, be capable of doing stuff that, forget about Lehman Brothers, be capable of doing some really cool stuff in M&A that requires all of that grounding. And that all came from Tepper. I certainly didn't know it. If that kind of change can happen with Tepper, dude, you guys are in a great place. I mean, all kinds of changes can happen. It was an eye opener for me. People talk about eye openers. I mean, literally, I'm not even making it up. I had no conception. What is Excel? What is this tool? How do you navigate it? And now it's, for some time at least, now my job is more about talking to people and telling stories, et cetera, et cetera. And, but in the earlier phases of my career in M&A and consulting, I was sharp compared to some grads from other places, as Josh mentioned, as Kyan mentioned. So yeah, Tepper did that. Yeah. So you're in a good place.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate your time sharing with the students today. It's an anxious time, a stressful time for them. We're in uncharted waters, as everyone is saying. So we're not sure exactly what's going to happen, but I think today they've got some great insights from all of you. They've got to see that they're not alone, that they're part of the Tepper family, the Tepper alumni community that will be with them and support them, not just now, but throughout their career. So thank you for taking the time. Hopefully it's an encouraging word to the students. Students, these are alumni that are just like you. You'll be like them in a couple of years out there, hopefully giving back and staying connected and having amazing careers and making really an impact in the world. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for the, we call it now, no longer the COC, it's now the MCC, the Master's Career Center.
Okay.
So that's why you're hearing the MCC used, but we have a great team. I'm very proud of my colleagues in the MCC and in alumni relations, and we've got great faculty and support with student services. So really the whole Tepper community is together for it, and we really appreciate your time today. So continue to do well. I look forward to seeing you. It was nice seeing some of you on the alumni reunion calls that we had, since we had to have virtual calls this time instead of meeting in person. But we all look forward to the day when we can all be together again and see you as we travel. So thank you so much for joining us. Take care.